makes it all worth it. This is your why that gives you your purpose. Realize deep way under the surface, and like a fire needs coal in the furnace. This is your goal that makes it all worth it. This is your why that gives you your purpose.
Hello and welcome to Brandex Reviews. This is part 2 of my 28 years later, the Bone Temple review. So this is a spoiler review, unlike part 1. So if you don't want spoilers, go back and watch part 1 if you haven't already done so. This one I'm going to talk a bit more specifically, obviously. So, as I said in the previous video, I really enjoyed this film. I think people that didn't like the last film or didn't go watch the film because of what they'd heard about it, I think they will like this film. This is the movie that people expected, I believe anyway, or more so. From that trailer that we saw, that first trailer for 28 years later. It's definitely a return to form, which is funny because, like I said in the last video, it's not actually Danny Boyle that directed this one, it was Nia DaCosta. So let's get into it anyway. So certain little things I'll mention that I couldn't mention in the last one because it was non-spoiler. The Aaron Taylor Johnson character is not in this film. So that island that you saw, well, an island I suppose, yeah it was, where there's like a causeway leading to it, that's not in this film. They don't return to that. The Spike character, the kid, he is in this film, but he's not got as much of a prominent role. This film is more about the Jimmy Crystal character and the Dr. Kelson character. Now, like I was saying, there's a lot more gore in this film than there was in the last film, but it's not really anything more than what you saw in that first film. There's a lot of torture and so on. So, as I'd said in my review of 28 Years Later when that came out back in June, you've got this group of people that have modelled themselves, in a weird way. They kind of modelled themselves after like Teletubbies and Power Rangers and stuff that was around in the late 90s, early 2000s that kids were into. Because the leader of the gang is Jimmy Crystal, models himself after this guy called Jimmy Savile. Now, in a nutshell, if you live in the US and you've no idea why Jimmy, there was basically a children's TV show host called Jimmy Savile. And he was not just an abuser of children, he had a legacy of it. And depending on who you listen to, he didn't just do things with children, he did things with dead bodies as well. He didn't just do things with children, he procured children. He was a very evil person, and that really, a lot of people know that was just the tip of an iceberg. What we actually know that's come out since he died is just a very small part of the story. And it's a huge embarrassment for Britain because he was hailed as this very charitable man, this very hard-working for charity guy. He was the person that you would trust your children with. He used to have a show called Jim'll Fix It, where children would write in and say what they wanted to do. So, for example, a child would write in and say, I've always wanted to ride a London bus. Can you fix it for me to do this? So they would get the child to come over to London and let them ride a London bus or whatever, and the kid would have a great day. And if they were probably left alone with Jimmy Savile, they'd have an experience that they would never forget. So obviously that wasn't in the show, but that all came out years later, about a year after Jimmy Savile died. And I think he was knighted as well by the Queen. He was Sir Jimmy Savile. So this character that we know is called Jimmy Crystal, he's modelled himself after Jimmy Savile in a kind of weird way, because in this movie everything kicked off in 2002 with a zombie apocalypse, whereas we know, me and you, obviously in the real world, know that the Jimmy Savile, the truth about that came out in 2012. So whereas we know, this guy wouldn't have known unless he was part of... Well, we all, to be fair, we knew before Jimmy Savile died. I knew that's what he was, but nobody believed him. They said it was a conspiracy theory. Turned out to be true. But the point is, this guy's misguided, and he's kind of modelling himself on... That's while the chains are and the blonde wig, all that kind of stuff. He's modelled himself on something that we, the audience, know to be very evil and it's very specific to the UK. So for a British film, it's a good call doing that. It's a good acknowledgement, a good way of kind of demonstrating it without being too on the nose. Well, he's on the nose, but it's not like they're having to tell you. But I'm having to tell you because people outside the UK probably aren't going to know. So that's basically his character, but he's a Satanist. Obviously, he wears a chains with an upside down cross. When I say he's a Satanist because he's a bad man, no, he's literally a Satanist. He says in the film, "I am a Satanist." He believes in the devil, but he's clearly. I mean, people can believe in the devil without being mentally ill. They can just be, vicious people or despicable people in a sort of philosophical sense. But he actually is mentally ill. He's got voices in his head. It's quite clear that even he lies, he makes things up about the devil. He's clearly just making things up on the spot to make other people believe him. So it's not like he has convictions. A lot of the stuff he knows he's not right about. There's a bit where somebody discovers Dr. Kelson. There's another woman that's one of the first people to notice him, and he's all covered in iodine, but they think that he's the devil because he's red. And they see Dr. Kelson engaging with the Alpha, Samson, as we saw in the previous film and in the trailers. And they're not fighting each other, and they're actually dancing. It gets a bit bizarre. And this woman sees it, and she thinks he's the devil, that Dr. Kelson is the devil, because she just sees this guy dancing around on a hill with this infected Alpha with his willy hanging out, flaccid or not, it's still wrong. And he's all red because the devil is red, obviously. And so Jimmy finds out about this person. She goes back and reports to Jimmy, and he says, "Oh, he's the devil, Uncle Nick." So nobody else can go talk to him. I'll go talk to him and I'll find out, because I think he knows he's probably not the devil. He thinks he might be the devil, but he knows he probably isn't. So check out himself. If he turns out to be the devil, great. If he turns out not to be the devil, he's just going to tell his people that he is, and kind of just blag it. And he tells, this is what happens, he tells Dr. Kelson, he says, when he finds out that he's not actually the devil, he just says, "Look, I like you, but I need you to do this for me, and if you don't do it, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to feed you your own intestines. I need you to pretend that you're the devil, and that I'm your son, and that they've got to obey me." So he's very manipulative, as well as being mentally ill. And if you've seen the bits in the trailer where you see the Ralph Fiennes character, Dr. Kelson, dancing around and there's flames and he looks crazy, there's a reason for that. He puts on a show where he plays Iron Maiden. I can't remember which song it is, but it's about the number of the beast 666. And he puts on a proper fire show. And at one point he even puts on this fire retardant suit, and he's dancing around in the flames and blasting this music out. And the Jimmy Crystal's little minions actually believe that that he is the devil, and he's doing it because he knows if he doesn't, Jimmy Crystal's going to kill him and feed him his intestines. So he goes along with it, but then he realizes that one of these, because they're all wearing masks, that one of Jimmy's little minions is the boy that he helped in the first film. And he's thinking, I can't do this for my own, to save myself, because this boy's going to get hurt. If these adults want to go out and do stupid stuff, I can't really stop them. But if they're going to drag that kid along with them, so I won't ruin it too much, but yeah, you'll see for yourself. So what else happens in the movie? Obviously there's stuff with Samson as well, so that's the Alpha, and obviously we saw him in the first film. He was kind of the main villain of the film in a lot of ways, whereas in this one, because obviously you're looking at him as a villain, but he's just a guy who's been infected like anyone else. Dr. Kelson finds a way to not just sedate him to kind of keep him at bay, but to actually give him peace. And it turns out that Samson keeps coming back to Dr. Kelson for more morphine because when he's on it, it dials a rage down and it just gives him relaxation from this terrible rage virus. So they spend quite a lot of time just sat down, and Ralph Fiennes' character, Dr. Kelton, is talking to Samson and saying, look, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but it'd be really nice if you could just talk. You know, are you actually just getting a momentary bit of relief? Are you actually experiencing normality in your own mind? Are you remembering things? Do you know who you are? Do you know who I am? Do you know what I'm saying? Or are you just kind of like an animal that's just feeling a bit better and not as angry? It's like, what are you experiencing? Because it looks like the Alpha, he's got humanity. There's a lot of acting with like physical a physical type actor, because he's not talking, because he's a zombie, but you can kind of tell from the expressions that he's got in his face and his eyes that he's not just like an animal that's just been doped. He's like thinking, he'll suddenly go like that, and then he starts looking at the moon, and at one point he looks at the moon because it becomes evident that the morphine is going to run out, like at the current rate that he's having to use it at. It's going to run out in 2 weeks. So after that, Samson's just going to go back to like being rage infected, and there's nothing. He's not going to be able to stop him basically, or give him relaxation. So he says to him, he says, look, I don't know if you can understand me, but if we carry on this way, we're not going to be able to keep you in this state. What I can do is I can give you this needle, and it will give you the ultimate peace. He's basically going to kill him, just let him die. And he says, you know, because the doctor, and he's obviously got the Hippocratic Oath, he needs consent to do it, and he's like, if you could talk right now, it would be like really helpful. And he's just not, he's reacting like physically, but he's not saying anything, and he can't say like, is he consenting? And he just thinks, fuck it, I'm gonna have to just kill him. I'm just gonna have to just do what I have to do. And he puts the needle in his arm. He's about to, like, whether it's cyanide or whatever, and just as he does, Samson looks up at the moon and he says the word moon. It's like, fuck, and he takes the syringe out and spares his life. And that's kind of early in the film. So there's little scenes like that anyway, like really good. You didn't get that in the previous film. So when they talk about in the last film how like some of the good concepts were good but the execution wasn't great, this is your execution. So these movies you do need to watch. I mean, you need to watch both of them because the setup is in the previous film. You're not going to know what's going on if you don't watch the previous film. But like one reviewer saying they should have led with this film because because this film is better basically. They should have just opened with this. They could have done, but it would have been a longer film because you need the last film and you need kind of a lot of the last film. You couldn't have just condensed it and just have this as like an extra 40 minutes added on to this film maybe at the beginning. That would have made this film about 2.5 hours long. And we've got way too many films like that are just a 2.5 hour do in the cinema. It's good to have two separate movies that you can distinguish between the two. There's enough that kind of sets them apart. I mean, it might be some people might watch these films once, then like in a year's time they might not remember which one was which. But generally, I think there's enough to distinguish between the two films. And there's enough in that previous film that was set up for this that made it worth it. That maybe there were certain things that weren't done great in execution in the last film. Your execution is in this film, it pays off. So to the core, the core won't watch this video actually, to be fair, because this is a spoiler review, but you saw the previous videos, I did the reviews with him. He watched 28 Years Later and liked it. From his point of view, I don't think he's going to be disappointed when he watches this film. So somebody's just messaged me saying I've heard good things about it. I might go see it tomorrow. So there you go. While I'm reading that on my phone while I'm recording this review. So I was really pleased with this, and it's just kind of a shame that this year doesn't seem to have a very good lineup for movies coming out at the cinema. So it's great to open 2026 with a film like this, and I think it's going to, based on what I've seen, it's going to be hard to top this film as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, it's subjective. There's going to be people saying, "What are you talking about? There's a film coming out in 2 weeks. It's like a Dune film that's going to be like epic." Is there a Dune film? I don't know. I don't care. But as far as I'm concerned, movies that I like to go see, I don't think there's really much else coming out this year. So this might be it. We'll see. But I've given a few little spoilers there. What else can I say? Like I said, the Jimmy gang, they're known as the Fingers, as in like because they're his fingers on his fist. A fist is a claw or something. I don't know what the hell. He's weird, is Jimmy, but he calls his people, they're his fingers, and they are a brutal set of bastards. The way that gang works is they have tryouts basically. Anyone that they come across, it's join or die. If you can fight to the death any of my fingers, my people, you can take their place basically. And by doing so, his gang will always be like getting stronger because anyone that can kill them joins them and replaces the one that didn't win. So it's a good way of having a kind of small controllable gang but keeping them at its optimum strength. And a lot of them aren't to be underestimated because the kid, obviously they picked up the kid at the end of the last film. I kind of thought there might be some like child predatory kind of thing going on there in terms of because of the Jimmy Savile connection, but they didn't go there. I thought they might have done that because you never know how dark these films are going to go, especially the first film, because there was like a child in the first film that was like at risk from getting abused. But I'm trying not to use keywords because you get shadow banned on YouTube. But so I thought maybe they'd go there. They don't do that with this. It's just basically a violent gang, so there's no like sexual thing to it. But the kid himself has to fight one of these, and he does actually win. I don't know if he knew what he was doing. He seemed to know what he was doing. He went for an artery, and even though he was in the leg, he stabs the opponent in the leg. A grown man. This kid just, because you're thinking this adult's just going to kill this kid, and the kid just pulls down his pants, the guy's pants, and stabs him in the leg, but it hits an artery, and the guy just bleeds out within like a minute. So then that's why the kid joins the gang then. But then they get some other people and torture them, and then the last one to survive, Jimmy says to him, right, if you can beat any of my people, you can take their place if you want to accept the challenge. If you don't accept the challenge, we're going to torture you. But if you want, we'll let you live, but only if you fight and kill one of my people and replace them. And so this guy says, yeah, go on, challenge accepted. Well, which one do you go for? And he says, I'll go for her. And he points at the girl who looks really like meek and just not capable of fighting. You wouldn't think so. And she seems a bit kind of like weird, and she kind of dances around and does like weird stuff, but she doesn't seem very combat efficient. Or you haven't seen that. And he gets into a fight with her, and she looks like really scared, but then she just kills him because she's actually really like efficient and can do like she's like brutal and like knows a little bit of martial arts and so on, and hand-to-hand combat. So the gang themselves, although they kind of look goofy and silly, and especially in the last film, and even when you see them in this, they look goofy and silly. They're actually pretty tough. You won't want to come across them. So there's plenty more I could say about this. We'll probably do follow-up reviews, I'm sure, later on in the year when we do a Halloween special. We'll probably do a proper retrospective for this one, looking back, because the film will have been out for a while then, and I'll have rewatched it since then, and the core will have seen it as well. The only other thing I will say now, going forward to the future of this was supposed to be a new trilogy. The first two films were being done back to back, and from what I understand, they were trying to gauge the how much demand for a third film there might be, and also based on the box office success of these first two movies. I was a bit concerned because that last film apparently didn't do as well as they'd hoped, but they have greenlit the third film. They are doing it, and Cillian Murphy's character Jim from the first film, that was one of his first films, Cillian Murphy at all, but obviously the first 28 Days Later film, he was the main character in that. He does return in this. It's the last scene of the film. It's basically the equivalent of, remember in the last film how that film ended and it introduced the Jimmy character. It was a weird scene. This end scene isn't as weird. I like that they do this and they didn't do it as like post credit, especially because I was busting for a piss. But it's right at the end. It's not post credit, unless there is something post credit and I don't know about it. Is there? Tell me in the comments. The film ends where it shows, I'm pretty sure it's the same like cottage from the first film where they set up at the end, where they're sewing together the big thing that says help, and they've got like chickens and so on. I'm pretty sure it's the same building. It shows there's like a young lass, she's maybe like a young girl, she's like maybe 16 or 17, something like that, and she's black. The reason I mention that is, I'll get to that in a moment. The Jim character played by Cillian Murphy comes in and starts talking to her, and he's like a school teacher, but he's her dad at the same time. And the reason I mention that she's black, the implication there is that she's she's his daughter, and that he had a child with the Naomi Harris. That's the actress. She played Miss Moneypenny in the Daniel Craig Bond films. You know what I mean? She was the actress in 28 Days Later. She's a good actress. So much range in so many different films. You can do like good American characters as well. I'm not sure you work like black actress or an actress of color. No. So she isn't shown in this scene. I'm assuming she had a kid with Jim. I don't know if she's still alive. She might just not be there. I hope she's in it because she was really good in it. I mean, if you've seen that first film, she's a standout of that film, absolutely. I know it's Cillian Murphy's film, but she's like, her acting in that film is just like, it makes the film. It was like so good. And like I say, she's been great in other films like Southpaw, and obviously she was in the Daniel Craig Bond films as well. As a pretty good Moneypenny as well. It wasn't like too pretentious or anything like that. But to say she's supposed to be the character that she is. But point is, anyway, so they're in this film at the end, and they hear a noise, and they can hear a lot of like zombies like shrieking, chasing somebody. They're chasing Spike and this other character that survived, this female character. Both good characters, obviously. And they're being chased in the field. And Jim says to his daughter, right, you know what to do. So they run out with guns, and they can see him being chased, and the girl says, are we going to help them? And Jim says, of course we are. And then they just kind of like run off towards them, and it's playing the music from the 28 Days Later movie, you know, right at the end. I think it's called In a Heartbeat. If you look up 28 Days Later score, In a Heartbeat, you'll know you can probably imagine what the music is now anyway. But that music's playing as the credits roll, as it kind of fades to the credits. It's like so good, such a good ending, and such a good lead into the next movie. A lot of people hate it when films do that. Marvel movies used to do it all the time. I didn't mind it because each Marvel movie was good. I know they were criticised quite a bit for doing that, and this film does it as well. But on the strength of these films being good, I appreciate that they did that. It makes me want to see the next film. It could have been just a rhetorical ending, to be fair. They could have ended it there as like a fun kind of like use your imagination, what happens next. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, they are doing a fifth film, depending on how you look at it, but in this new wave of movies, given that it's been 20 years, they're doing a third 28 years later movie. So I'm up for that. Presumably that'll be out next year. You can tell that these movies aren't massive budget and don't need to be. I mean, to be honest, if they were, I think that was the thing about 28 Weeks Later. It was a little bit too polished, a little bit too American. Not that American movies are bad, but for the story that they're telling, there has to be a lot of kind of drudgery and just there's no fancy buildings, there's no big set pieces, there's no like tanks and so on and all that kind of stuff. There's a bit of pyrotechnics in this movie, but nothing, and there's some fairly big actors, but in terms of budget, they don't need to be that expensive, these films. So I think it's quite easy to make these films that don't demand a huge box office return, just to at the very least break even. So anyway, lots I could say about this film. Like I said, I did my previous video as well, which was non-spoiler. I know I've rambled a lot in this, so if you stayed with me, I don't know why. I don't know why you're still watching, because I'm just talking a lot of bollocks. But that's my initial spoiler review for 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. Thank you very much for watching.